front office is a damn joke. Y'all damn joke. Are you serious? We let Justine Pissott walk so that we could keep Damiris Dantas. That old lady can't move, man. She got concrete.
There it is. The Indiana Fever just let a 6'4" sniper with a 7-foot wingspan walk straight to the reigning WNBA champions for absolutely nothing. And the reason they did it? That's the part that should actually make your blood boil.
This was from Chloe Peterson. Per the WNBA transactions page, the Las Vegas Aces have tendered an offer sheet to the Fever developmental player Justine Pissott. The Fever had 24 hours to respond, putting her on a standard roster. But then she just put this up. I'm told, per league sources, the Fever will not be countering Pissott's offer sheet from the Aces. This is crazy.
Justine Pissott is officially gone. The Las Vegas Aces tendered her an offer sheet, and according to Chloe Peterson, the Fever had 24 hours to match it by moving her from a developmental contract to the standard roster. They chose not to. They just let her go. And before you think this was some cap space issue or roster crunch they couldn't solve, understand this: they had options. Multiple options. They could have cut Damiris Dantas, a veteran who's averaging 3 points and 1 rebound and barely sees the floor. They could have moved Grace Van Slooten, who they signed and then refused to play in actual games, but they didn't. They kept both of them and let Pissott walk to Vegas.
Justine Pissott, congratulations. She'll be making $150,000 for the rest of the season rather than the $700 a week from the Indiana Fever. And she's going to get a chance to actually play for this team. She's going to get a shot to play. Justine Pissott just...
So what does Vegas get? They get a young stretch four who can shoot the three, has legitimate size, and just proved in preseason she can score in bunches. Pissott dropped 10 points in 3 minutes against the New York Liberty in a preseason game, pulling up from deep, looking completely comfortable, and then the Fever never played her again in preseason, not once. You want to know why? Because they were trying to hide her. They knew if she got more exposure, someone would come take her, and that's exactly what happened.
They let Justine Pissott, a 6'4" young sniper with a 7-foot wingspan, they let her walk for Damiris old ass I can't play no more Dantas. 3 points and a rebound a game. Like, come on, man. You can't be serious.
Look at what Pissott's getting now. She goes from making $700 a week on a developmental deal to $150,000 for the rest of the season with the Aces. That's life-changing money for a young player. But more than that, she gets a real shot. She's going to play alongside A'ja Wilson, who's likely winning MVP this year. She's joining a championship-caliber organization that knows how to develop talent and actually uses their bench. The Fever gave her none of that. They kept her on the developmental roster all season, gave her garbage time minutes at best, and now they've lost her for nothing in return.
And she let it be known earlier in the season that she wasn't looking to stay on a developmental contract. She wanted out of the developmental spot. She did not want that. She said, I'm not settling for a developmental spot. I want a real roster spot. She let that be known from beginning of the season. The Indiana Fever did nothing. They kept Damiris Dantas, bro. This is crazy. This is absolute craziness.
And here's what makes this even worse. Pissott made it clear from the beginning of the season that she wasn't settling for a developmental spot. She wanted a real roster spot. She wanted to compete for real minutes. The Fever front office heard that, had months to address it, and did absolutely nothing. They sat on their hands. They kept rostering players who don't contribute, and now they've handed a legitimate young talent to the team that's won back-to-back championships. That's not just bad roster management. That's organizational malpractice.
With Amber Cox, I can't say I'm surprised. And I told you guys earlier in the playoffs, when she played in that preseason game, earlier in the preseason, when she played in that one preseason game versus the New York Liberty, the girl had 10 points in 3 minutes. She was pulling up from deep, and then she never played in any preseason action after that. I told y'all they were trying to hide her. I told y'all they were trying to hide Justine Pissott because somebody would come and take her, and Justine Pissott is officially gone.
Let's talk about what the Fever actually need right now. because this is where the decision gets truly baffling. Caitlin Clark is your franchise. She's the reason attendance is up, she's the reason national TV games are happening, she's the reason this team is remotely relevant. And if you're building around a player like that, a generational passer and shooter, what do you need? You need floor spacers. You need players who can shoot the three, drag defenders out of the paint, and give her room to operate. Pissott is exactly that player. 6'4", can stretch the floor, and has the length to be versatile defensively. She's the prototype for what you want next to Clark.
It is a clown show what is going on with the Indiana Fever's front office, man. Amber Cox is a straight up bum. Amber Cox is a straight up bum for letting Justine Pissott walk. We should have played her actual minutes. That's what we've been calling for, honestly. We've been calling for this, for her to actually get minutes. And you guys
Instead, the Fever are running out lineups with players who can't shoot, can't space the floor, and clog the paint. Damiris Dantas is 31 years old, averaging under 20 minutes a game, and providing almost nothing offensively. The Fever are paying her to sit on the bench, while a young, hungry player who fits the system perfectly just signed with their biggest competition. Explain how that makes sense. Explain how that's putting the best possible team around your franchise player.
Show that is the Indiana Fever. It's ridiculous. Indiana Fever will probably go find somebody else from South Carolina to pick up and give a developmental spot to. This is ridiculous, though. This is ridiculous. I think it's disgusting that they've just lost Justine Pissott, man. Wow.
And this isn't the first time the Fever have made decisions that make you question whether they actually understand what they have in Caitlin Clark. Look at the roster construction overall. They've brought in veterans who don't fit the timeline. They've drafted players and then refused to develop them. And they've consistently failed to surround Clark with the kind of shooters and athletes that would maximize her skill set. It's like they're building a team to function without her, instead of building a team designed to win with her. And that's the part that should terrify Fever fans, because it suggests the front office either doesn't understand modern basketball or doesn't care.
They don't guard that girl on offense. I'm sorry. We like KK. I would have rather seen Justine Pissott get a chance to play. When Michaela Timpson is out there, they don't guard her. They don't stand next to her. We needed an actual stretch for her, and Justine Pissott could have been perfect next to Caitlin Clark. But
now let's flip this and look at it from Vegas's perspective, because what they just pulled off is borderline brilliant. The Aces are the two-time defending champions. They have the best player in the league in Aja Wilson. They have one of the best coaches in Becky Hammon. And they just added a young, cost-controlled stretch four who can contribute immediately and grow into a bigger role. That's how championship teams operate. They identify value, they move quickly, and they don't let opportunities slip away. The Fever just handed them that opportunity on a silver platter.
For a long time, they have zero interest in building around Caitlin Clark. They are building a team to play without Caitlin Clark. They're not building a team to win with her, because Justine Pissott is the perfect three stretch four that you need for Caitlin Clark that drags that big out the paint.
Think about what Pissott's role could be in Vegas. She doesn't need to be a star. She doesn't need to carry the offense. She just needs to be a floor spacer who can knock down open threes and provide length on defense. That's it. And in Vegas's system, with Wilson drawing double teams and Kelsey Plum and Jackie Young creating off the dribble, Pissott is going to get clean looks. She's going to have space to operate. And if she hits even 35% of her threes, she's a rotation player on a championship team. The Fever could have had that. Instead, Vegas does.
They have no interest in building this team around Caitlin Clark. It's blatantly obvious. It's clear. And this is sad. Justine Pissott is officially gone from the Indiana Fever. She's officially staying with the Las Vegas Aces. Amber Cox, Stephanie White, you guys are pure bozos. Get down.
So let's talk about accountability, because someone has to answer for this. Amber Cox is the general manager. Stephanie White is the head coach. Between the two of them, they made the decision to let Pissott walk. And the explanation they're going to give, if they give one at all, is going to be some version of, "We liked our roster," or "We had tough decisions to make." But that's not good enough, because the tough decision here wasn't tough at all. You had a young player who fit a need, who wanted to be there, and who was going to cost you almost nothing. And you chose to keep veterans who aren't contributing over her. That's not a tough decision. That's a bad decision.
They wouldn't even match the offer sheet. They could have got rid of Van Sluten. They could have got rid of Damiris Dantas. Y'all could have got rid of Bree Hall. Like, bro, what are you doing, Indiana? This front office is idiot.
And here's what this decision signals to the rest of the league and to your own fan base. It signals that the Fever front office either doesn't know how to evaluate talent or doesn't have the courage to make the moves necessary to win. Because cutting a veteran like Dantas to keep a young player like Pissott might ruffle some feathers in the locker room. It might upset some agents. But if you're serious about building a contender, you make that move. You prioritize fit and upside over sentiment and seniority. The Aces do that. The Liberty do that. The Fever don't. And that's why the Aces are champions and the Fever are watching them add pieces. The Fever had multiple players they could have moved to make room for Pissott. Van Sluten was signed in the offseason and has barely seen the court. She's played in a handful of games, averaging 2 points, no real impact. If you're not going to use her, why is she taking up a roster spot? Why not clear that space for someone you know can contribute? The answer, apparently, is that the front office values roster continuity over roster quality. And that's a losing mentality. There's also the question of what message this sends to Caitlin Clark. She's the face of the franchise. She's the reason the Fever are relevant again. And the front office just made a decision that actively makes the team around her worse. They let a player who could have helped her walk to a rival. How is she supposed to feel about that? How is she supposed to trust that the organization is doing everything possible to win? Because from the outside, it looks like they're not. It looks like they're more concerned with keeping veterans happy than with building the best possible roster. And before anyone says, well, maybe Pissott isn't that good, or maybe the Fever knows something we don't, let's be clear about what we saw. In the limited minutes Pissott got, she showed she can play. She shot the ball well. She moved without the ball. She has the size and length to be a factor defensively. Is she a finished product? No. But she's 23 years old, with clear upside, and the Fever just gave up on her without ever giving her a real chance. That's the definition of poor player development. You draft or sign young talent, you invest in them, you give them opportunities to grow. The Fever did none of that. Now let's zoom out and talk about what this means for the Fever season and their future. They're currently sitting in playoff position, which is a huge step forward from last year. But if you're being honest, how far are they going in the playoffs? They're not beating Vegas. They're probably not beating New York or Connecticut. And a big reason why is roster construction. They don't have enough shooting. They don't have enough versatility. And they just made that problem worse by letting Pissott go. Looking ahead, the Fever are going to have to make some real decisions about this roster. They have Clark locked in. They have Alia Boston, who's a foundational piece, but beyond that, what do they have? A bunch of veterans on the wrong side of 30 and young players they refuse to develop. That's not a championship core. That's a treadmill team that's going to make the playoffs, lose in the first or second round, and run it back with the same flawed roster next year. And if that's the plan, Fever fans should be furious. The other layer to this is what it says about the Fever's front office philosophy. Are they trying to win now, or are they trying to develop for the future? Because you can't do both halfway. If you're trying to win now, you go all in on veterans and proven contributors. If you're developing for the future, you invest in young talent and give them real minutes. The Fever are doing neither. They're keeping veterans who don't play and letting young talent walk. That's the worst of both worlds. That's how you stay mediocre. And mediocre is exactly what the Fever have been for years. They've had flashes of competitiveness, but they've never been able to sustain it because they don't make the hard decisions. They don't take risks. They don't commit to a vision. And now, with the most talented player they've had in a generation, they're repeating the same mistakes. They're playing it safe, keeping the roster comfortable, and hoping that's enough. It's not. It never is. So what happens next? Pissott goes to Vegas, gets integrated into their system, and probably contributes to another championship run. The Fever finish the season, make the playoffs, and get bounced in the first or second round. And then in the offseason, the front office will talk about how close they are, how they just need 1 or 2 more pieces, and how they're committed to building around Clark. And none of it will mean anything because they just proved they're not willing to make the tough calls necessary to actually win. They had a chance to add a piece that fit. They passed, and that's going to haunt them. The frustrating part is that this was avoidable. This wasn't a salary cap disaster. This wasn't a situation where they had no options. They had clear paths to keeping Pissott. They chose not to take them. And the reason why, whether it's organizational politics, poor evaluation, or just plain stubbornness, doesn't really matter. The result is the same. A young, talented player who wanted to be in Indiana is now wearing a Vegas uniform, and the Fever are worse for it. So here's the question Fever fans need to be asking: if the front office won't make the obvious move to improve the roster when it's staring them in the face, what makes you think they're going to make the harder moves that are coming? Because this roster needs more than just one stretch four. It needs shooting across the board. It needs athleticism. It needs players who fit the modern game. And if the front office can't even keep Justine Pissott, how are they going to land the bigger pieces they need? The answer, based on what we just saw, is they're probably not. And that's the reality Fever fans are going to have to accept. This front office, as currently constructed, is not equipped to build a championship team around Caitlin Clark. They're going to keep her surrounded by mediocrity, waste years of her prime, and wonder why they can't get over the hump. And by the time they figure it out, it'll be too late. What do you think? Did the Fever just make the worst roster decision of the season, or is there something we're missing? Drop your take in the comments, and if you want to see more breakdowns like this, hit that like button and subscribe, because this story is far from over.